Hi, everybody. Welcome to our TribalHub webinar today with BirchStreet and Cherokee Nation Entertainment. Happy you guys are all here on the call today. I see some familiar names in here, so thanks for joining. Um, if you guys want to use the chat while we're waiting, I probably have a couple more minutes before everyone gets in. Let us know where you're dialing in from. It's like my thing I do in every webinar because I love to see how wide-reaching we are. I am calling in from our office in Michigan, beautiful Michigan. It's finally summer here. It's like sunny and 70, which is wonderful. So, and despite the backgrounds, Tom and Eric are not in the same location. They are in different locations.
I was to say thank you, Michelle. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So funny enough, I actually reside in the Phoenix metro area, but I'm
Uh,
actually in Michigan too this week. I'm in the Detroit metro area visiting my parents and headed up to your way today to Traverse City.
oh,
So,
nice.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, it's supposed to
yeah.
be gorgeous this like week, but the weekend is supposed to rain, of course. So,
Oh yes, yes, of course.
all right.
Jennifer, New Mexico. What part? I was in New Mexico last week actually.
Very cool. I love how we were just all have people from all over. It's so cool. All right, so
Nice.
without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? Again, welcome to our webinar today called The State of Tribal Gaming Procurement, Why Modernization is Essential to Efficient Operations. I'm glad to see so many people on the call today. Before we get into everything, a couple of just general reminders. Use that chat feature to have if you have any questions whatsoever. You can also use the Q&A button to submit questions that won't go in the general chat. We will answer all questions either during or at the end of the session. So make sure you know whatever you want to ask. Make sure you do that before we end the call today. And just a couple of reminders of the learning objectives. While you're listening to the presentation, you can think about evaluating practical strategies for implementing procurement technology, including how to build internal buy-in and where to focus first and what outcomes you might be able to measure and what you can expect. And we'll be talking to about understanding the rising costs, supply chain distribution, all those types of things across tribal gaming, and why casinos that delay modernization risk losing visibility into spend and even falling behind on NIGC standards. So some good stuff we're going to be talking about today. For those of you who don't know BirchStreet, you'll be meeting them today. They are valued TribalHub associate member. So thank you guys so much for being an associate member. And Cherokee Nation Entertainment is also a TribalHub member on the tribe side. So happy to have you guys here today. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Tom.
Absolutely, Michelle. Thank you so much, and I appreciate each and every one of the attendees that is joining today. Understanding I came from a hospitality background, understanding how busy you are with your operation, so it's critical that you have the right systems and tools in place. So this is educational, and I hope that you find value in it today. So let's dive in. If you want to go ahead and Kelly, the next slide. So what we'll share with you today, first, the state of tribal gaming procurement. So we have some great individuals that are panelists on today's call that really have in-depth experiences, both not only in gaming and hospitality, but specifically in the tribal space. Why procurement modernization matters now, right? More than ever, right? Why you need to have a single system, not 15 systems to run your procurement, right? And then our great strategic partner from Cherokee Nation, Eric, will be sharing kind of Cherokee Nation's transformation and what they did with BirchStreet and how BirchStreet kind of helps them run their operation more efficiently from the procurement side. And then we'll talk about what does that look like, right? We understand, and believe me, I understand it specifically from the sales side, right? It's not just something that you can just sign up for, right? You have to get buy-in for your team. There are a lot of moving parts, and we want to make that as easy as possible for you, no matter what solution you choose. But what does that look like? What do you need to consider when you evaluate procurement solutions, right? What's important? We want to give you a toolbox to arm you with the information possible to be empowered to make that decision. And last but not least, what questions do you have with us, right? So you have a team of industry experts here that you can ask questions with. During the presentation, please feel free to come off chat. We're very open-minded here. We want to hear from you. But if you're more comfortable, please use the chat. We do have a team moderating that. We want to ensure that all of your questions are getting answered because this is about you today. Let's go to the next slide. So really quick, this isn't about me, but I'm just going to talk about myself real quickly. I'm going to hand it off to my great panelists. So as I mentioned, my name's Tom McQueen. I'm based in the Phoenix area. I've spent my whole life in hospitality in different roles, all the way from operations in hotels and cruise lines to working in hospitality tech, both for Oracle, Salesforce, and now for BirchStreet. So I do have a background both in hospitality operations and specifically, I've been working the last couple years in the gaming and tribal gaming space. So I understand that the challenges that you face may be much different than you would see at a Hilton or Hyatt or even a Las Vegas or a commercial property, right? So this is really my passion is tribal gaming is how do I empower you to empower your nation and also your customers and guests. So I'm going to stop talking for a second. I'm going to hand it over to Eric. Eric, if you want to introduce yourself, and then Joe.
Uh, Thank you, Thomas. Eric Shoemaker. I'm the corporate director of food and beverage for Cherokee Nation Entertainment. Cherokee Nation has 10 tribal casinos in northeastern Oklahoma and a commercial casino, Gold Strike, in Tunica, Mississippi. So I've been with Cherokee Nation since 2005. So I'm coming up on 21 years now. And I'll turn it over to Joe.
Thank you so much, Eric. Joe DeVore, I'm the Vice President of Gaming Account Management at BirchStreet. I have also been in the gaming and hospitality industry my entire career, starting out in hotel operations, much like Tom did, and then transitioning into IT. I've been in IT in the gaming industry for 20 years at MGM Resorts International, the Cosmopolitan, and Wynn. And then I've been at BirchStreet for the last 4 years. My role at the company is I own all of the customer relationships for all of our gaming customers, along with my team, and of course, all the tribal gaming relationships. And my role is to make sure that the customers get the maximum benefit from their subscription in the system. So they achieve their operational objectives and solve their operational problems. That is my responsibility.
Thank you, Joe. And what's great about working, and I work with Eric and Joe on a regular basis. We're very on the ground with our customers, right? Is having industry experts from these gentlemen. They really basically develop what we'll do in the future, right? So this isn't the kind of team that stays static, right? We understand that you have unique challenges that need to be addressed that are specific, especially I know some of the attendees. You have really regional locations that may not have the same logistics as major cities. So we want to ensure that we're giving you the best tool and the best solution possible, not only in terms of cost management, but procurement, because ultimately it impacts the guest experience. So what I'd like to do now, just a little bit, kind of an icebreaker for the team. There's obviously a lot of solutions for procurement out there. There's a couple that have been specifically built for the hospitality industry. So Michelle is going to pop up a poll on your page. If you could answer that question, I just kind of want to understand what our backgrounds is here and our knowledge of procurement solutions. So if everyone could fill that out, please. And we'll give everybody a minute. And the other thing I would ask, once you fill out that panelist question, if in the chat you could just tell me your name and then also your role within your organization, it just helps for us to kind of gauge our, procurement, finance, food and beverage. Just always like to gauge our audience to make sure we're targeting our communication towards that. And thank you so much for sharing, Michelle. So, okay, it looks like we either have a Oracle background here. A lot of our attendees have come from an Oracle space, or another piece of software. So that's just good to understand as we're gauging through this. And then, as I mentioned in the chat, if you could just mention your role as well, because we want to ensure that we're addressing all departments and all stakeholders to be inclusive. So thank you very much for that. And Joe, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you. So we'll go ahead with the next slide.
Great. Thank you, Tom. So the state of tribal gaming procurement, first of all, rising costs is a major problem across the tribal gaming space. There's supply chain volatility, both with pricing and with availability. This has caused just with the nature of the complex procurement environment, but also geopolitical events like tariffs. Um, Initially, we thought tariffs would be temporary, but they have stayed around, and they have definitely they're affecting day-to-day procurement for the tribal gaming and the war in Iran. Also, the pricing has increased, and then also the availability of goods has been impacted. Also, there's staffing shortages. This began after COVID as many companies moved to a digital environment, and the employment market became global. So you're not only competing with suppliers in your local market, you're competing with employers across the world for employees. So um, having a solution to address the staffing shortages with automation and getting moving tasks away from employees that are rote and repetitive and having them do meaningful work is a huge competitive advantage and allows you to find and retain key employees that you need to run your operation. There's also compliance pressure, both within your tribal governance and the MGICS requirements that need to be met. And it's overwhelming to try to meet those requirements without a solution. And we'll be able to share how BirchStreet can help you not only achieve compliance, but maintain compliance. Then there are inventory and food cost challenges. This multiplies as you have more and more outlets. You don't want to over inventory. You don't want to overbuy because that will go directly to your bottom line. You'll have spoilage and you won't be able to use all the ingredients. But also, you want to have all of the key ingredients for your recipes on hand. You don't want to have to tell your guests that a key item has been taken off the menu because that has a direct impact to guest service, and that patron could decide to leave the casino, and that would directly impact the gaming results. There's also complexity with growth. Many of our tribal customers and many tribes are growing, which is a great problem to have. You're either building more casinos on your tribal land, or you may be acquiring casinos in other jurisdictions, which is happening, every day in the news. With that growth, um, the procurement process and the controlling costs and inventory becomes even more complex. And having a solution where you have visibility across all your properties becomes critical. And lastly, the tribal gaming members are like burdened with manual processes, like paper processes, spreadsheets. They're having to handle key workflows via email. To be able to keep up with the pace of business and maximize savings, you really need to automate these manual processes. And tools like BirchStreet enable you to do that and provide immediate benefit to the bottom line. And Tom, I think over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, Joe just talked about some of the challenges, right, that are really happening in the industry and some of the pain points that, you may be dealing with, right? But why does this matter now, right? And that's any decision when you're looking at technology, like why this solution, why now? So we're looking at, I'm just looking at kind of the audience and where we're from. There's a lot of us that have remote operations, right? So we don't have access, as I mentioned earlier, to the same resources that major cities has, that a Las Vegas metropolitan area has, right? So we need to be able to adjust to those. We need to be able to face what you deal with as a regional operator when you run out of something, right? Being able to stay on top of things to make sure your operations is efficient. And a lot of properties I see, and I've seen this in the tribal space, are growing, right? You're adding more locations. Eric just mentioned that they're adding on Gold Strike, right? So how do we standardize across multiple brand or multiple properties, right? Almost like a major hotel brand, but still have centralized procurement control at the main property, right? Or at the headquarters, right? There's a lot of manual processes. Joe said that multiple times, and I'm sure many of you are facing that today. whether that is entering invoices in, whether you have an AP team that or a clerk that needs to enter in those invoices, approval processes. These are all things that can slow down the procurement process and ultimately affect the guest experience, right? So you need a solution that builds in the automation. And I didn't mention the A word yet, AI, right? That's the new thing, right? How do we work with AI instead of fighting against it, right? How can we use that to modernize our current tech stack and make your life easier and your employees' life easier? And that is one of the things that we look for, right? When we're looking at solutions is like, is this solution going to make my life easier? A. And B, if it is going to make my life easier, what is involved in getting it set up? And so those are all things that you want to consider. But once we do that, we then have all the things that you see on the right. We have that enterprise wide visibility, right? Analytics are only as good as they can be used. So do we have actionable analytics? Do we understand our costs? Do we understand our vendor relationships? All of that from one central screen that allows us to drill in. Do we have those automations set in so that our, AP clerks or our team isn't spending hours entering manual invoices, right? Because I get that challenge a lot from my property, right? Is, that my teams have so much to do and there's so many things we want to do, but we can't do them. Why aren't we automating a lot of these processes, right? Why aren't we streamlining approval workflows? Those are all the things that are return on investments when you invest in the right procurement system. Go ahead, if you want, Kelly, go on to the next slide. So now that we've kind of given a high level overview of some of the challenges in the industry, right? Whether it be regional operations, rising costs because of current events, staffing shortages, and talking about why you need a solution that would enable automation, enable efficiency. Let's talk about a organization and a gentleman here who's been a trailblazer in this way and done that and trusted BirchStreet with it. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Eric.
Great. Well, Eric, I thought we'd get started. If you could just walk us through the journey that Cherokee Nation Entertainment and you took and how you ended up championing procurement modernization.
Sure. So like I said earlier, I started my career here with Cherokee Nation back in 2005, and that was a period of time when there was really rapid expansion. Um, Gaming was growing considerably across the state, not only for C&E, but for tribal operations across the state. Between 2008 and 2019, we were in a constant cycle of growth, building new properties, rebuilding smaller ones, created a couple of full resort destinations. And we completed our last new casino construction project in 2019. And at that time, the gaming market in Oklahoma was getting pretty saturated. There's about 130 casinos or so in the state now. And so we knew we had to really start focusing on looking more towards expense control and stuff. We weren't going to have those just great growth years that we've been having for a while. We had to focus in on expense controls. So we kind of started looking at the process and talking about it. But then, 2020 comes along and COVID arrives, and that kind of changes everything. We had to pump the brakes on where we're going there, start looking for ways to manage product shortages, restricted menus, challenges with being able to reopen safely, and what are we going to do after we reopen? How are we going to do this? But that really, for us, kind of highlighted the need and the timing to do this as well, too. So one of the first things we, did, we took one of our buffets and converted it to a food hall. But while we were doing that process, we started interviewing BirchStreet, Red Rock, Stratton Warren, all the different companies that they showed on the screen a minute ago, and decided really this was the time that we needed to get into this. And so that's when we dove into it and ended up partnering with BirchStreet.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric. And what did your procurement process look like before modernization? What was your biggest pain point?
Well, the biggest pain point was it was very manual. We use PeopleSoft as our financial system, and so we couldn't we didn't have that visibility into PeopleSoft. It was a manual upload of pricing updates and such. So most of our properties were working with online ordering systems and pre-sellers. And, just there was a lack of controlled visibility, and we couldn't see the full picture of what was going on with each of the properties. So,
That makes sense. Yeah, that is a tough situation to be in. And what would you say would be what was the tipping point that led C&E to seek a P2P solution?
well, I don't think there was a really like a drastic tipping point. It was something we had known for a long time that we were going to do, but because of the growth phase we'd been going through, it wasn't something that needed to be done during that time. I mean, it would have been nice to have been able to do it at that time, but when you're seeing that continued growth, you just want to keep growing and growing. And we waited for that to slow down a little bit. And that's when we started looking into it. And I think, between that, some of the external factors that happened, when we got back out of COVID in 2020, it was time to really dive into this and start the research and find a good partner.
That makes sense. F&B has unique pressures, from perishables and menu changes to managing supplier relationships. How did those shape what you needed from a P2P platform?
Well, I mean, we really just needed a single platform that could manage the ordering and the receiving across all of our properties, so we could, get real-time visibility into what was going on, make decisions quicker, especially in products, that move fast and margins that can shift daily. That level of insight was very essential to helping us improve our operation.
Excellent. And how did you get buy-in from executive leadership and from the line levels, team staff to change long-standing processes?
Well, the buy-in from the executive level was very easy.
Hmm.
Um, you know, just getting them to approve the money to move the project forward and make it fit into the timeline. The the buy-in from the support departments and food and beverage a little more challenging. So as we interviewed, 4 or 5 different groups through this process, I was more or less the project lead, and so I made sure that we had each department involved in the process to make sure that I could get their buy-in, that they had a chance to say which company we had scorecards. We let them all score each of the companies. What's the positive? What's the negative? Let's look through it. But, we needed accounting, finance there. We needed IT to be there. We needed the warehouse to be there. We needed all the groups involved to really get in and buy into the process. And even when you get leadership from a department to buy in, you still don't get buy-in from everybody that's involved. So then it comes down really as you start implementing it, though, to getting the buy-in from your frontline food and beverage staff, your food and beverage management that's utilizing the the technology, and that becomes a challenging in itself.
Definitely. Yeah, it sounds like you and the team really had a solid approach to this transition. And what early wins did you realize in the first 90 days?
I think the biggest wins was really we got to understand our waste a lot better.
Hmm.
Um, we started finding a lot of overproduction, especially in batch recipes and such. So as we were tracking that, we were really starting to see that what we were disposing of, what we were throwing away, and we started being able to dive into those recipes and understand what each property par level should be on different items as we would go through the process.
Excellent. And looking back, Eric, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I mean, I think looking back, you can always find a lot of things that you could do a little bit different and clean up the process, or because you're learning as you go. For us, opening 10 properties, because we haven't done Gold Strike yet, as we did of each one of those, one at a time. Each time we learn something and we kind of implement it as we go. But at the same process, because we were doing them individually, we were implementing what we were learning from the first property and all of the 9 properties as we were going along as well too, to help simplify it. But I think in that process, you do find some things. I don't think we were prepared well for the level of support that we were going to need from everybody to do this. It was a very big undertaking, to getting all these operational changes and customizations done. There was a lot, so it was got to set some time aside. You got to be prepared to spend a lot of time on calls, working through processes. You got to work with each of your departments to get buy-in, especially. But I think we did it the right way. But yeah, we've changed a few things, absolutely. But we're happy with what we did.
Awesome. And then for tribal gaming operators just starting this journey, where should they focus first?
Well, start with the end in mind. Be clear about what you want to accomplish and what's realistic, attainable. I like the process we did. We implemented slowly to try to communicate clearly what the expectations are, especially with your vendors, receiving teams, the groups that are involved. Because if you went through each hurdle, you'd come up with against something else. I mean, you got the buy-in from the teams internally, but then you got to get buy-in from your suppliers too, and some of that becomes a little bit more challenging too. So just takes time, and be prepared to go through the process.
Great advice. And has there been better visibility into spend and inventory? Um, has this changed your day to day? Has the better visibility into spend and inventory that you've acquired after this transition and implementing BirchStreet changed your day to day decision making?
Yeah, I mean, I think the visibility, provides us better control, and so we're able to at least a better buying power. So we're able to work through things that we want to do a little bit differently. We can see things now much clearer, and um, we can get flags when we're outed. We see when Cisco's our primary vendor. If they're out of a product and they try to sub a product to one of our properties, we can catch it, because it's not in the system. We can put a stop to it. We want that consistency. I don't want you to, here, I've got this for you to use because we don't have that, So we see all that, those type of things, and have a much better understanding of what's going on. And we're able to hold our vendors more accountable to making sure that they're providing us with the products that we expect and that we expect to get.
Excellent. And then
Sorry.
my final question for you, Eric. Oh, did you have something else you wanted to share about that particular
No, I
topic?
just gonna say sorry, my camera quit working for some
Oh,
reason.
no problem, no problem. All right, and this is my last question for you, Eric. And thank you so much. You've really provide some very thoughtful answers. But my last one is, where do you want to take procurement at CNE next? What's next on your roadmap for your evolution?
It's just to continue to unlock the value of the data that we have now, and that we'll be able to collect, and we can leverage that for better buying opportunities, tighter controls of what we're purchasing, and continue to refine our operations. So our goal is really to reduce the manual process across all the departments, so the supply chain becomes more efficient. Um, so as we're doing that, and our process was a little bit different because we had 9 properties that ordered one way, and then we have our Hard Rock property here in Tulsa, which has an F&B warehouse. And so as we went through this process, we started off, did those 9 properties. We had to do them one way, and then when we got to Hard Rock, we had to kind of reinvent the process because we were going to be pulling product from a food and beverage warehouse. And that fell in line because that's where we're going to go next. Is we're taking this to our Mississippi property, and they have an F&B warehouse as well too. And so that was kind of strategically planned because we knew we were going to go through a different process. But um, as we continue to do those things and get the Mississippi property onto BirchStreet, that'll continue to take us in that direction. But it helped us even with the Mississippi property because we were able to utilize that to leverage our vendors now as well too. So we get that buying power from all 11 casinos, and we work through Cisco and different suppliers to um, to get better buys on specific products that we can standardize. And BirchStreet helps us with that insight to be able to see that and negotiate with the vendors on the products that we want.
Excellent. Well, Eric, is there anything else you wanted to share with the attendees of the webinar before we move to the wrap-up phase?
I guess I would just share that, for us, like I said, it was a slow process. And, our philosophy had always been that we're an amenity to the gaming floor. Our goal is to serve quality food and keep people on the machines longer or keep them at the property longer. But through changes that have happened, we migrated our role a little bit to that process. But the overall objective is to provide quality food and keep the gamers on the floor. So, but with BirchStreet now, that gave us insight to how we could do that much, much cleaner, much clearer, and make sure that as we went through a process of standardization, really with a lot of our food and beverage operations, we wanted that standardized product, that consistency at every property when a guest goes in and they order a burger from the same concept. We want to make sure that they're always getting that same item made the same way, same recipe, same ingredients always. And BirchStreet really helped give us that insight to doing a much better job of that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing all these insights. And Kelly, I think we're ready to move on to the summary portion. All right. Well, starting your modernization journey. So, if your organization is just getting started on this type of journey, where should you begin? And you really should begin with visibility. Get a single view of your spend and your inventory across all your outlets before you try to optimize anything. And then once you've achieved this visibility, and a tool is going to be critical to achieving that visibility. Like with BirchStreet, for example, we would be able to provide that visibility to you through implementing our solution. Second is to standardize the basics, to have common vendor catalogs, to have common approval workflows and receiving processes across all your properties. Standardization. That would be the second phase of your journey. The third phase would be to build the buy-in about the standardization. So as Eric so well explained with this Cherokee Nation Entertainment's journey, this is multiple conversations with multiple groups. You can start with the executive team and make sure that you're going to have their buy-in and the resources that you're going to need to be successful in this undertaking. But then engage with the team members who are on the front line, receiving the goods, managing the warehouse, in culinary operations, the chefs, and just engage them, find out what their pain points are, because you definitely want to solve as many pain points as you can through this journey, and solving the pain points of the day-to-day users of the system is one of the best ways you can secure their buy-in. Then the fourth phase would be to measure what matters. You want to track your AP cycle time. You want to track the number of confirming POs that you do, or after the fact POs. And BirchStreet has a dashboard product called Operational Insights that helps you track this. Tracks it at your organizational level. It tracks it at an individual property level. and it also benchmarks your organization against anonymous data of all of our other customers. And we only have customers in the hospitality and gaming industry. So it's benchmarking you against your peers. And that's really cool, really critical to be able to, number one, see if that you've met your original goals for your journey, and then also to continually improve. Also, you want to measure your food costs, and you want to measure the exceptions that you have in the process. And we're ready to move on to the next slide. So the key takeaways: the industry pressure is real. Costs are rising on a daily basis. We have staffing shortages. There's supply chain volatility. Unfortunately, that's been pretty much a constant challenge since COVID. There's tightening NIGC and mixed compliant rules, and the gaming industry itself is changing. Your operations are expanding, and with the expansion is a great opportunity, but it also creates the need for visibility and standardization. And then modernization is the path forward. Visibility, process consistency, stronger financial controls, turn procurement from a back office function into a strategic lever. And then lead with visibility and then build from there. You get an enterprise-wide view of your spend and your inventory first. And then you're able to standardize your processes across your outlets and let your early wins build the buy-in for the full adoption of your embracing of implementing a new P2P solution and with modernizing your procurement operations. All right, we are ready to proceed to Tom.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you so much. And, team, I appreciate everyone here today, just as we kind of go through some of the challenges, right? And the theme that keeps coming up is how do we use technology, right, to make our life easier and ultimately impact your guest experiences and your nation's experiences, right? So one of the reasons that Joe and I decided to work for BirchStreet, right, is it is truly a purpose-built solution for hospitality, but not only for hospitality, right? We're built for tribal gaming. And that's one of the reasons that I cover the gaming and tribal gaming piece of it, is because out of all the procurement solutions out there, the reason I chose to work for BirchStreet is because it empowers procurement and finance teams. And it is a single solution, right? A single solution that has all of the modules you need. So there's a lot of solutions out there. When you're evaluating today, right, I would say the biggest thing that you want to look for is how do we reduce the complexity of IT, not add to it, right? How do we bring in all the integrations we need into a single platform, a single system? So BirchStreet really is built for, it is not even really, it is built for gaming, and it's built in exactly what you need. So starting off, we have e-procurement, right? So being able to use punch outs, being able to use vendor catalogs, being able to have a single source of truth for all your procurement and managing that not only at the enterprise level, but at the property level. And then we move into AP, right? So we can connect with your existing ERP solution, whether you're using Workday, whether you're using Sage, whether you're using Oracle, right? We can do that. And we have three-way match that is AI enabled. And so we can get down to the line level matching. So instead of having right now, if you have an AP resource that is manually entering those invoices, we can either ingest them through OCR or electronic invoice, right? And then we move into the inventory at the bottom there. So we can get real-time smart inventory at the property level and at the warehouse level. So because we listen to our customers, we have a complete warehouse solution in there with cycle counts. So we have a true robust inventory solution. And Joe mentioned food costs being such a big thing too. And I know a lot of our tribal gaming partners today and not are either on the Oracle solution or the Agilysys platform. We do integrate with both. So being able to get down to recipe management and understand our costs and our inventory on site and on hand when it comes to menu costs. And then last but not least, this is certainly one of my favorites, is payments. So we actually have our own payment solution. And what's so cool about this, it's called BirchStreet Pay. Within our solution, we can pay on behalf of the property. We can cut checks. We can do ACH. We can do virtual card. But there's more. We actually pay you back a rebate. So imagine that I come to your house and I cut your lawn for you, and then I take those grass clippings and I sell them for fertilizer and I split the profits with you. That's how Birch Street Pay works. So we have solutions, or we have, I should say, customers today that are using our payment solution. And because of the rebates that we've negotiated on behalf of you with all of your vendors, we share those rebates with you because we pay them in real time, and that ends up paying for the entire solution. So this you don't have to pay for, no pun intended here, and you get all of these modules included for no additional cost because the rebates that you're making from this more than pays for the solution. And in some cases, we even have customers that are making a net profit. So we'll actually pay you to use our software, if that makes sense, which is pretty exciting and can be really helpful to tribal gaming organizations as you're trying to scale. And I know a lot of the ladies and gentlemen that are on the call today, that may be challenges, right? When you go to your C-level executives, or if you are a C-level exec, taking that to ownership or to the government, right? Being able to say, hey, we want to integrate this solution. How much is it going to cost us? Well, nothing if we use pay. The third thing I'll mention about pay is the audit level compliance. Because you're using BirchStreet now for your entire procurement solution, the amount of detail and as far as when that check has been cut, the date, all of that, it's a lot. The security level on it just goes 3 times that because it's all on a single solution. So if I had to leave you with one thing today, Birch Street is a solution that will pay you to use, and we have all the necessary tools in it that you need, both from a procurement, a financial, and a food and beverage and operational standpoint. We certainly just wanted to give you a high level education today of the procurement industry and the procurement, the challenges that the industry is having, right? But also let you know when you're evaluating a tool, you really want to look for a tool that has all of these modules on it. Additionally, Joe mentioned Insights. That's our business intelligence tool. And we also have tools for engineering and maintenance teams, from capital projects to being able to manage that. And I'm actually working with a tribal gaming property that is interested in that today. So we do have experience in this area. We understand your industry, and we really are a purpose-driven, all-in-one solution. So whenever you're evaluating that, you want to look at a partner that has a single solution that makes your life easier. So with that, I'll just turn it over to our next session here, which is just general Q&A. So I'm one of those guys that loves to get the audience involvement. So I would love to just to get some feedback here. If anything today, what is the one topic that is of most interest to you of all the things we talked about today, from cost control to compliance to automated invoicing to payments, which I just mentioned here? What one thing resonated with you the most when you consider evaluating a P2P solution? And you can put it in the chat. You can come off chat, however you're comfortable. And I'll give everybody just a minute to put that in the chat.
I also wanted to just say, Tom, I love when you at the very end, when you're like, if you just take one thing away, because that's the one question that I always ask at the end of our webinars is, what do you hope that, the people on the call, if they just take one thing away, or if you could tell everybody on the call, just do this one thing when you leave here, what would it be? You know what I mean? That's a great takeaway. So I'm glad you shared that.
Absolutely. A lot of information today, a lot of
Yeah.
information shared with everyone on the call all the time. So, if anything, I would love to just hear what's one thing that, you will think about, or that you could take away,
Hmm.
bring value to your organization and to your role.
Yeah, and I think that's hard. It's hard with tribal organizations, and sometimes, they're purchasing their F&B could be a handful of people, you know what I mean? So, and then you have larger organizations, so everybody's different in where they're at. So it's nice that you guys know that, and you work with tribal properties, so you understand that that challenge that some of them face. So
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, that's
mhm.
the thing. It's we want to we want to be at where you need us to be, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
scale and we can work with those requirements. And I think that's the biggest challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
In procurement is every operation is a little bit different, especially in the hospitality industry. But we
Yeah.
take gaming and we take the complexities of tribal nations, right? We want to ensure that we're serving you in the best way possible. So the more feedback,
Mm-hmm.
the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And while we're doing that, team, any other questions that I can answer from anyone on the call today about BirchStreet or just about generally about procurement or the challenges in procurement today?
One of the things I was curious about, Eric, and maybe you didn't have to go this route, but it sounds like you really had everybody involved from the very beginning, as far as the with Cherokee, with your from your IT team to your F&B staff. Did you ever have to get your tribal council involved, and how did that work? And at what point did they come into the conversation?
Well, for us, they did. Um, I mean, I say they didn't. I mean, they obviously um, are notified, but
Mm-hmm.
the way we're set up, the nation kind of lets Cherokee Nation Entertainment run the casinos.
Mm-hmm.
The nation itself runs the nation, and they put a lot of trust in our leadership to operate Cherokee Nation businesses and Cherokee Nation Entertainment, and the tribal council and the chief. They focus on what's best for the nation itself and the 14 counties of the Cherokee Nation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that again could be different too, you know what I mean, based on tribe. So looks like
Yeah,
we
if we would have
oh,
started this process 15 years earlier, then the tribe would have probably been a little bit more involved. But as we've grown over time,
yeah.
I think they just decided to take a step back and it was like, you guys need to run your business. We'll run our part of the business, and um, we'll do the best for the Cherokee Nation from from that perspective.
Awesome. Nice.
Yeah, it looks like Billy, you thank you so much for sharing, Billy, about working in finance. Yeah, of course, anything that doesn't cost money, right? But streamlining, right? How can we make your life easier? And that's something, from not only the AP side and the invoicing side, but also from the payment side, right? Let us handle that for you, but give you the line level detail and compliance and let us pay you to do it. So I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
you sharing.
Yeah, and then just to elaborate on what Tom said on the AP side is we have a three-way match where we automatically compare the purchase order, which is what you ordered, to the receiver, which is what arrived at your property, to the invoice, what you're being billed. And if they match exactly, we can create the payment voucher for you. So your team doesn't have to manually look at those documents and just verify that the totals are the same. So that saves a lot of time. You can also set up a tolerance where it may not be worth your while to investigate variances of $25 or less. And we have customers who are having three-way match percentages above 95% in tribal gaming. So that's really exciting. And it just takes away the non-value add work. Having, one of your valuable team members just verify that totals are the same, something that the system could do for you, really isn't the best use of that individual's time and isn't meaningful work. So that person could focus their energies on the variances and why they're happening. Why is the supplier that committed at one price invoicing you at a different price? And is there a pattern where they're doing that multiple times? If that's the case, maybe a frank conversation is needed to be had with that supplier, letting them know that they're going to need to honor their pricing that they've agreed to, or you may have to investigate finding another partner. And that's going to save the tribe real money.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions that we can answer, whether it be about challenges or just plain curiosity about who we are as Birch Street, or something you'd like to share about your property, how we could potentially help you? I know it's lunchtime for some of us, so I
Well, I will say that if anybody does have questions, make sure to reach out. Everyone will receive an email tomorrow that will have links and emails. If you needed to reach out to Joe or to Tom, that will all be in the message that you'll receive tomorrow. And we'll also have a link where you can view this recording and share it to anyone else in your team who may not have been able to make it today. So, did you have any last comments before we rung off for the day?
Michelle, I would just thank you so much to the TribalHub team and also all of my attendees. I know that your day is busy and we really appreciate it. And thank you to Eric for sharing your experience with
Yes.
Street.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And thank you everybody for attending. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.